illogical. Wait, what?
Hey everyone, welcome back. So I finally finished beveling out all of the pieces and creating the 45 and steeper angles for the sides as described in the manual. Look, I really do think if you know how to use a block plane properly, if you've got a sharp block plane, it probably is the easiest way to go. It probably, you'll get that beveled edge a lot faster than I did. It did take quite a long time to sand all of those panels. So much sanding, but I'm very, very happy with the result. The edges are super smooth and I've got some really nice angles and we're ready to move on to the next step. Someone actually did watch my video. I got a comment from someone named Clint, and Clint's told me that Nick Offman actually has a book out called Good Clean Fumble. I actually already own that book. My wife bought me this book last Christmas, but what I didn't know, Clint's let me know that in the audio version of the book, Nick reads it himself. So it's going to be really hard to concentrate now because I can listen to Nick while I work. Anyway, time to get on with the next set of steps. So the next set of steps are actually going to be stitching the bottom hull pieces of the kayak together and inserting some temporary forms to give the hull the shape that we want before moving on to the sides and eventually the deck. Now, when you're working with this, obviously I'm going to have this up on sawhorses, but if you think about the shape of the kayak, it's not flat on the bottom, it's going to go down to a curved point, and it's, you know, if I just put that on top of the sawhorses, it's just going to kind of roll around. So I've decided to create some forms, some temporary forms that will hold the kayak in place. So I'll either clamp or maybe even just screw them into the sawhorses, and they'll be in the shape of the hull, and the kayak will be able to sit in there while I work on it. Now, the instructions do mention creating some forms, but they don't actually tell you, you know, how to or give diagrams or measurements on how to use these forms. However, I have consulted the prophecies.
No, the prophecy!
And looking at the instruction manual, you can see those temporary forms that are going to be used to give the whole shape while it's being built. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those various pieces there and I'm going to trace out their shape onto some other pieces of wood. And that's going to provide us with the temporary forms we can attach to the sawhorses just to hold the kayak in place while we build it. Okay, so we're finally ready to start putting this thing together and making it look like an actual boat. So first things we have to do is get the two bottom hull pieces. I'm going to put them up here on the sawhorse. We're going to put them, we're going to try to make them a mirror image of each other. These guys have to be placed together, stacked together, and then threaded with wire along the keel seam. So now that we've gone as close as possible together, it's just going to be a matter of passing the copper wire through the holes on both sides and then bringing it together. Now, at this time we do need to loosely tie these off. But until I have placed all these together and had a good look at it, I'm just going to leave them loose and dangle like that. So ready to do that a bunch more times. All right, that actually went a lot easier and smoother than I thought it was. I thought I'd really be struggling to find the holes, but once it was lined up, it was actually really easy. You could just poke them straight through. You didn't have to, mess around struggling to find the hole on the bottom. Now the instructions say now that we should sort of loosely tie these together, because the next step is going to be to open this out and start putting in the bulkheads to make the form. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and just loosely tie these together, and then we will get to making this look somewhat like a kayak. Okay, first moment of truth. We should be able to pick the wood duck up and open it up kind of like a book. And well, let's give this a go. All right. That is our first look at this. So I'm wondering, actually, at this point in time, if I have made these too tight. It did say make them loose. It does kind of open up still. It's starting to look more like what I was thinking. It absolutely did say leave them loose. Have I went too tight? Maybe I have. Let's loosen a couple of these off a bit. I do not want to break anything at this point. Okay, let's get the bulkhead. It's a rear bulkhead. I mean, look at that. That is not going to fit in there. If that is how wide the base of this thing is. Not even close. I mean, okay, let's stop the recording and figure this out. Okay, so that wasn't, I don't think, entirely clear. I think they could have made the instructions a little clearer, or maybe I'm just not as smart as I think I am. But either way, the bow of the boat is the shorter part that's forward of the puzzle joints, which you can see on the instruction booklet. So the second from the end panel is where the rear bulkhead goes on this 12-foot model, and then behind that, the stern form. And then in the front, we're going to have our forward hull form, which is sort of going to start bringing the kayak, bringing it narrower down towards the bow so I can cut through the water. And then lastly, the bow hull form. Now, they're not kidding when they said that this thing has to be wired up loosely to start with. I've loosened them off entirely, which was a mistake. But if you have a look at this rear bulkhead, which needs to be fitted first, you can see how the panels, the bottom panels, are almost flat at that point. So once you wire the rear bulkhead in place, then you've got to wire all these other ones. So you are supposed to wire that rear bulkhead in tightly and then wire in the rest of these forms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do exactly that. I'm actually going to pass the wires through for all of these forms. I'm going to get someone to assist me and just hold up the sides a little bit while I tie in that rear bulkhead. And then I'm going to go along, and as I wire in these different forms, I'm just going to give these little wires a bit of a twist just to make them hold their shape a little bit, because at the moment they are completely loose and it's pretty much just sitting flat. So let's get to it. Well, I am finding the instructions a little bit frustrating at the moment. The manual first asks you to put those two pieces together, as we discussed, and stitch the hole and then open it up like a book. Now, it just says to make the stitches relatively loose, which I thought I did, and the boat kind of opened almost at a 90-degree angle. Now that was nowhere near the angle we needed, especially near the rear bulkhead where the bottom of the kayak is almost flat at that point. So I've went back and loosened them a couple of times, and the copper's getting weaker each time. In the end, I untwisted the copper, just left it open until we had put the different forms in the deck. But then I've read through the actual instructions, and nowhere in the instructions does it tell you to go back and tighten the stitches that you've already put in. I have read up until the point where we're epoxying the hull together, which makes it quite confusing. So the next step is actually to bring the stern and the bow together. And I'm hoping that in doing that last part, we'll get a little bit of shape, and then I'm just going to go back and tighten all the stitches anyway. I noticed that when you put the sides on, the exact same instructions, leave the stitches relatively loose, but it never actually goes back and tells you to tighten them, which makes absolutely no sense to me. So we're just going to go ahead and try to get the bow and the stern stitched together, and then we will see how that goes, I suppose. So you'll notice here in this section that the stern of the boat here has been wet down. That is a tip from the instruction booklet that if you wet the wood down, it starts to make it a lot easier to bend. And that actually did come in really handy here when bringing the stern and the bow of the boat together. So I wet down just with a spray bottle the outside and inside of the hull and left it 10 minutes and did that process again and repeated that for an hour till the wood was like completely saturated inside and out and had soaked in. And that really did make this process a lot easier. And you can see here as we move on to the bow of the boat, I've done the same thing. I've wet back probably 30, 40 centimeters. I don't know what that is, 15 inches in the front of the boat. And again, it really did make that process a lot easier. You can see how much easier that wood is bending in. Another tip that wasn't in the instructions, but I did read it somewhere online, is that once you have wired this in, just to leave the boat in the position it's in for 12 to 24 hours, and the boat will start to relax into that shape, or should I say the timber will start to relax into that shape, and it will make any adjustments or continuing to bend it into shape a lot easier. Once there was a lot of pressure on the bow, like here, you can see that the seam at the bottom is opening up, and that seam was almost impossible to close at this point. So after we stitched this together, we decided we would just leave it till the next morning and see how that went. Okay. Well, I left the kayak overnight and it's dried out, and I'm quite happy with how it's turned out. It's sort of, as you can see, everything's sort of started to peel up and take shape against the forms. We still need to tighten or retighten this center seam here, but pretty good. And also, I think it was good to leave it for the 24 hours because the wood has kind of taken on that new shape now. So when we do try to tighten these stitches, it's a lot easier than it was before. It wasn't all good news, however. You can see here that my bow shear has had its tip snapped off. I'm pretty sure I know who the culprit was. Hey, Luna, look. Yeah, exactly. Pretty sure I know who the culprit was, but we have found the piece, so it's not going to be a huge deal. We're just going to, I'll probably just put it all together and then I'll glue that little piece in place before epoxying over the top. You can see now how easily the hole goes together and is ready for stitching. So yesterday, after I just put this together, it was so hard. It was so stiff to pull together. So, like I said, I think it's good. I think it's given the wood some time to sort of take on that shape. And now we'll tighten up the tires with the help from my lovely assistant, my beautiful wife Sarah, and we will see how we go. All right, so I think we're going to leave it there for that episode. I originally had intended to get the entire hull, including the hull and the sides, built in this episode, but with the problems I had and having to undo the stitches and redo the stitches, it took a lot longer than I thought. So we're going to leave it there. I think it's going to be a recurring theme as I move through this, that I don't think the instructions are really adequate. I mean, possibly that's just myself and the experience I have, but things that I think it just would have helped to have a few more sentences, even just a couple of points just on, put the stitches in loosely, wait till the sides are on before stitching the whole pieces together. But just saying, make them relatively loose, which is open for interpretation anyway, and then later on in the instructions, never telling you at what step it's a good idea to tighten those, leaves it too open for interpretation for me. And that has caused me quite a bit of consternation, where I've had to go back and forth and repeat steps and completely take the wires out and put them back in. And in any case, we're getting there, right? So I can't wait for the next episode. We're going to get the sides on. We're going to get the thing is actually going to start looking like a proper hull. We might even be able to squeeze in getting the deck done as well, but we'll see how we go. Till next time. See you later.